If I were to go outside right now, as I once did, I actually once did this at lunchtime here in Newark. I went out on the street and I asked everybody who walked by, over 150 people in a half an hour period, do you agree with the proposition that it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals? And I couldn't find anybody who would disagree with me. And you know, it's very difficult to find anyone who would disagree with the proposition that, you know, that it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals. Now, what do we mean when we say necessary? Well, I mean, interesting concept. Well, certainly if a rule against unnecessary suffering means anything, it means that you can't inflict suffering on animals for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. I mean, if you've got a rule that says it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on animals, but it's okay to do it if you find it amusing, pleasurable, or convenient, then you've got a rule with an exception so large that the rule is meaningless. But yet, most of our uses of animals can only be justified by pleasure, amusement, or convenience. Take, for example, food. That's the largest number of animals we use, over 10 billion in this country alone every year for food. 10 billion, huge. I mean, a billion is 1,000 million. I have a hard time even understanding that number. The best justification we have for inflicting pain, suffering, and death on over 10 billion animals a year is that they taste good. Not a particularly compelling justification when you think about it. There's only one use of animals that can't be dismissed as completely trivial, and that's the use of animals in biomedical experiments. Now, I don't believe we ought to be using animals in biomedical experiments under any circumstance, but I think that's a more interesting debate that you can have. I mean, at least there's something to talk about there. I don't agree that we should do it. I think all vivisection is wrong, so I want to be clear about that. But the use of animals for food, whether for meat, dairy, whatever, use of animals for entertainment, use of animals in sport hunting, those uses comprise the vast majority of the animals we exploit. The number of animals we use in biomedical experiments is quite small relative to those numbers. Can't be justified except for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. So if we claim on one hand to take the idea seriously, take animals seriously morally, and say, well, we think it's wrong to inflict unnecessary suffering on them, yet most of the suffering and death that we inflict on animals is only for reasons of pleasure, amusement, or convenience. I regard that as moral schizophrenia. Our treatment of animals as things is deeply ingrained in our consciousness. It really is deeply ingrained in our consciousness. And that's what we've got to start looking at. It's not a question of let's be more humane to them or let's treat them better. And, you know, I mean, that to me is not only not an interesting question, but a profoundly uninteresting question. The interesting question is, why do we think it's all right to use them in the first place? There is no moral justification for it. And most of us already accept, we already accept the seeds of that. We just don't, for some reason, carry through with what we claim are our moral views.